All right, it's recording now, so
Okay,
we
yay,
get
thanks.
the right when we get to the hard stuff. So okay, so we can probably run this and see what we get. All right, so now we have some data in this array. So Uruguay has 4. It looks like they only played 1 home team. Argentina only played 2. And so those are the scores or the goals that they did while they were the home team. So pretty straightforward for that side. And it looks like these teams, they didn't play any home team games. So they were away only, and they'll get caught when we do the away teams. But first, I'm going to refactor this a little bit. So we have the home team. I'm just going to create a variable called home team goals. And then that's just going to be this right here. I think it makes it a little clearer, you know, a little less cognitive load. Like as you're reading this, you don't have to make the leap of like object and then a key. It's just a variable. Home team goals. Okay. So now let's do the same thing, but for the away team. So I'm just going to copy and paste this here. This is going to be away team name. And then of course we'll have, well, let's do another variable called the away team goals. So it'll be away team goals, away team goals. All right, away team goals, got that variable, put it in here. So now basically same structure. If it's not defined, we initialize it as an empty array. And after that, we know that that key, away team name, is going to be an empty array. And then we just push on the integer that's represents the away team goal. So if we run this, it should give us full count. Yeah, there we go. So looks like Uruguay only had 1 match. Same with England. You know, Argentina had 5 matches, a combination of away and home. So I'm just going to spot check this. Kind of helps with confidence. Like, okay, is this actually right? So let's just see if like Uruguay, like there shouldn't be many instances. Looks like there are some though. So that's interesting. Away team.
I think it's right because yeah, I think only one final. Uruguay's only
Oh,
final because those are
right.
semifinal and quarterfinals. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's good because at first I was like, well, that's surprising, but that's right. We filter on finals. Okay, cool. So now that we got this, the next step is really to calculate the average here for each of these teams. And there really isn't any way to like figure out which one is going to be the, I don't know what you call it, the winning one for this. You know, first we got to calculate the average for all of them, and then we'll get the maximum value. So to do that, so now we got an object of all the team names and then all their goals scored. So the next step is we want to calculate the average for each one. So there's different ways of doing this, but I think the best way is to get all the keys of this object, so basically all the team names, and then iterate through those. So I don't know if this pattern has been taught yet. It's used pretty commonly, but we do object.keys of sums. Sounds like it might be familiar. So all this does right here is basically generates an array of the team names. So it gets all the keys, which is represented as an array. So we'll do for each on this. So the iterator value is going to be the team name. All right. So now we're iterating through all the team names in the sums. So what we can do is sums of team name. This is going to be the array. So I'm going to define a new variable called goals for that team name. So each iteration of this is going to set a variable called goals, which is going to be this array here. So now that we have this array like right in front of us, we can find the average. I don't know. I don't think there's a way to quickly sum things up for arrays in JavaScript. But I don't know for sure, so I'm just going to Google real quick and see what we get. Yeah, so there isn't like a sum function. Some languages like have like a built-in sum, but I was pretty sure JavaScript doesn't. You can only do reduce. But thankfully the syntax is not like super verbose, so we could do reduce here and set it to a variable. So let's just do sum goals. And that is going to be goals.reduce. Get the parentheses. Sum plus x. Well, instead of x, let's call it goal. That's more accurate. All right. So yeah, that should give us a sum of the goals. But the last part is we need the average. So the average is simply sum of the goals divided by goals.length. So that one will be should be straightforward. But yeah, we have the total. So like, you know, is that 8 divided by, in this case, 5. And that will give us the average for Argentina. So let's set this to average. Oop. Some goals divided by goals. All right, so now that we have this variable average here, but it's inside the for loop. And so we know it's going to get reset every time. So we need some way to, you know, basically track this average. So one way to do this is we can basically have a prior average variable here, and we can initialize this to 0. And then for each time we go through this loop, we can then compare the prior average. So we can say if prior average is greater than average, actually let's do it the other way. If average is greater than prior average, and we say prior average is equal to average. All right. So we're tracking the prior average, and if the new average, the one we just calculate, is more than the previous iteration, then it sets it outside the loop so we can keep track of it. And since we started at 0, the first one, which is Uruguay, and it's going to be 4, it's going to get set to 4. So we know like the first one's going to set it to 4, then the next one's going to look at it and compare it. If it's not bigger, then it's not going to set it. So this is a way to track the prior average. So I think what I'll do, we'll kind of like pause here and run it. I'll just return it first and we'll see what we get. Actually, instead of returning it, I am just going to console.log prior average. So I'm gonna run this and see if it breaks or not. Okay, so we got an error. Assignment to constant variable. So can't assign values to constants here. So I know this is a constant, but we're assigning it. So this needs to be let. So I'll change that to let. We'll run it again. All right, cool. And it looks like it printed out the prior average. Or maybe this is coming from somewhere else, but oh, okay, I see. So we got kind of a big bug here. This is pretty unsurprising because I was like, well, why is it printing it out so many times? Well, it turns out we have this final stage matches that we're still iterating through, but this right here is inside that. We definitely don't want that. So what I really wanted to do is close this loop out over here. So this is one loop that builds the sums up here. This is going to be the second loop. So I'm going to, should be better. Yeah, so now we have this iterating outside the loop. This was like kind of like a nested loop. That's not gonna work. All right, so let's try that again. Okay, great. So we got 4. 4 is the highest basically. So it doesn't tell us what team though, so it doesn't really fully answer the question, but it does tell us what the highest average is, which is 4. Which if we kind of look at the data is not surprising, because most matches don't have anything above 4. Brazil's only one who had a match above 4, which is 1 times 5, but their average is still a lot less than 4. And then this right here, England and Uruguay, I mean, it's easy to get an average of 4 if you only have 1. So it seems right, but it doesn't tell us a team name. So to get the team name, we're basically going to do something very similar as tracking the prior average. We'll just do winning team name, and then we'll just start with empty string there. So the winning team name is, so again, if the average is greater than the prior average, we're going to set the prior average, but we're also going to reset what the winning team name is. And that's just going to be team name. So for each loop, it's going to check, hey, is the average, is this a new kind of record average? If so, set the prior average just so we can compare it with the next time. And then let's also set what the current winning team is. And they may or may not ultimately be the winning team. So we're going to keep resetting it until, you know, this is no longer true for anyone. Okay, so then we can print out winning team name. Also print out the prior average. All right, I'm gonna get rid of this. Well, actually, I'll leave that. Okay, 4 and Uruguay. All right, so that's our winner. However, it's kind of, I mean, we could look at the data and see like, okay, it's really a tie with England. So Uruguay and England both are, you know, they're basically a tie. You know, there's ways we can settle that. This is kind of like what they call like a, I don't know, eager return. Like basically the first time, you know, whoever gets 4 first is going to win, because 4 is not, you know, if you have another one, it's not going to pass this comparison, because 4 is not greater than 4, so it can't reset these values. So that might be okay. So let's reread this. Returns the team with the most goals scored per appearance, average goals 4 in the World Cup finals. Yeah, I mean, it's you can't return 2 values in JavaScript, so we can't just return Uruguay and England. You know, so that's where it's kind of like function design is important. It's like, how do you handle a tie? You could just return the first one and just kind of make it arbitrary. You can throw an error and be like, yay, you can't do that. There's a tie, you know, there is no winner. You know, you could, if you're returning strings, well, I guess we are returning strings. You can return a string that says like, hey, there's a tie, this isn't a team. So lots of ways you can handle it. It's unspecified, so we can dive into that in a second. But finally, I'm just going to remove the console statements. I'm going to return winning team name, and let's see if there's, check our things off. So we did the average, calculate the average 4, yeah. And we figured out the team with the highest average, and we just returned that team. So I think we hit everything here. And so if we rerun it, let's first log out here. The result of this function. So if we run it, we get Uruguay. So that seems to be the answer to 3. So any questions or anything I can re-review on this? I figure we could go back through and refactor it a little bit.
Wait, so it picks Uruguay because, why isn't it picking England instead?
It picks, so if we go through each of these iterations, the first one is going to be Uruguay. And so 4 is going to be greater than 0. So it sets prior average to 4 and the winning team name to Uruguay. Then it does all the others, you know, and the average is lower, so fail, 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 fail. Then it gets to England. So England's 4 also, but since this is greater than, and it's not greater than equal to, it's going to say average 4 for England is greater than the prior average 4 for Uruguay. Well, that doesn't pass, you know, they're the same, so it skips over it. So if so I mean, if England actually just came before Uruguay in this, then it would have been England. So
got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is, yeah, of course.
It makes so much more sense when you like break it down into little steps like this.
Yeah, great. Oh, good to hear. So this is, I'm trying to think of other ways to do this. You could definitely do this in one big reduce statement. I find that would probably be a little more complex. But in theory, you could do this with like one reduce statement. Potentially. Well, I won't say one reduce statement. I still think you'd need kind of multiple loops. But yeah, I'm trying to think. But yeah, the filter side, I think if you kind of wrap this in reduce, it could work. But I think it's clear when you have a filter like this, because it's like first, like kind of cut down the data set to just what you're working with. I think another way to do this, so there's kind of a, like in computer science, you know, if you have very large data sets, you want to like, you don't want to like loop through those data sets a lot. And so we're actually looping through once, because the filter is a loop, you know, it's going to touch on every element. 2, and this one too, even though this is kind of a subset of data because it's just the teams, we really have the 3 loops here. So we could say like, let's say like, okay, these 2 first loops are like computationally, there's just too much data, it's not getting through it in a reasonable amount of time. So what we could actually do is, instead of filtering here, what we could do is just have a big if statement that says if match dot stage is equal to final. And so that's kind of how we just like filter it. We just don't do anything if it's not a final. And then that kind of, then we could just do data and we can kill this entirely. So that's an option too. I mean, it's really the same thing. This approach is like technically faster because it's only going to loop through this data once. However, is it more clear? I think it's a little less clear. You know, it's a lot more complexity inside this. So, you know, there's no right or wrong answer sometimes, but that is another option. You know, I think another thing we can do just for cleaning things up, we have sums of home team name. I think that's pretty clear. We got home team name, home team goals, away team name, away team goals. Sometimes I like to kind of group the variables together. So I may like refactor it like this. And so now we have our variables defined. For short if statements, I like to do one line, kind of like this. And then, you know, sometimes it can kind of clean it up, make it feel a little less daunting. These are not dependent on the line above, so maybe these would be better grouped together like this. So it reads a little clearer. So this might clean it up a little. So now it's a little more clear. Oh, okay, home team name, goals, name, goals. If there isn't a home team name, then you set the array, then do the same thing with away. So this might be a little clearer. This, I think there's a lot going on here. I'm trying to think of a different way to really track this, but this is generally a good way of doing it. I mean, ultimately, first you need to get all the get all the goals in some sort of array or something. I think another way to do this is if you did object.keys of sums, which this is all the team names, you can then even iterate over, well, actually that wouldn't work. Yeah, so it's probably a somewhat optimal way of doing this, but you know, there's certainly other ways of getting about this. So. Should we go on to the next one, or anything else we can dive in here?
Just do you mind just quickly going over again that, you know, the exclamation mark? I'd just like to hear it from you explain it.
Yeah. Sorry, which part?
The if, you know, and then exclamation mark sums, home team name, the line 84, 85.
Sorry. Yeah, so this is, so one way to refactor this, and might make it clear. So sums is like my tabs are all kind of weird right now. So sums is equal to, like, it's an object, and then the keys are the team names, and then the values are going to be the array. So what we're doing is, well, I'll say what we can't do is this. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to copy this. So what we can't do is just simply set an array to sums of home team name. The reason is because this is going through a loop. Every time it's going to reset and clear out our array. So it's not going to build up the values. It's basically going to set it to an empty array, then add the goals to the array, and then it's going to go back and reset. So that's why we need the if statement to first say, hey, is this key defined? And the best way to do that is with the not or the bang. So we say if this key is not defined, then we define it as an empty array. So I will show an example. How can I do this? Let me just open up. This will be a little easier, I think. Okay, so let's say we have the sums object here. Okay, so sums is an empty object. So if we did sums of, let's do England, I'll match it, equal to this. Okay, so we got an empty array. So now if we do sums, we got England, and it's an empty array. But what we need to do is check, because we don't want to reset it. So in the next line, we do like sums of England dot push. We'll just give it a goal. So now when we do sums, we get England has an array of one item, which is the number 3. But what we don't want is, you know, the next iteration going through to set this to an empty array again, because then it's going to clear it out. So that's why it's like, hey, if it's not defined, which if we were to do, like, let's do sums of Argentina, it's going to return undefined, and it says, well, there is no key in this object for Argentina. So the not says if it's not true, or if it's undefined. Undefined, I don't know if you've heard like falsy or truthy, but some values are considered like false. So undefined is false, null is false, false is false, obviously. So if we write this out now, we do if it's not defined, or if it's false of Argentina, then we'll set the sums object and set that key to an empty array like that. So this is basically what we have here for line 84. It's just representing, instead of the variable, it's like one instance of it. And so it's, yeah, if it's undefined or if it's not true. So all this is saying is like, if, the following statement is not true. We could also do this. That's actually just as valid. I think the bang, the exclamation point is just a shorthand, but this works too. So we could say, well, let's just check and make sure it actually is undefined. We know undefined is false, and so that's how we can kind of do that shortcut. But there's no reason, we can't do this either. So run that, and now we got the empty array. So sums now has Argentina.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? This one?
Nope. All good. I might have to rewatch it though.
Yeah. Hopefully the first part wasn't too much that we missed, but I think we'll probably cover it here anyways. Okay, so number 4, write a function called bad defense that accepts a parameter data, calculates a team with the most goals scored against them per appearance in the World Cup finals. Okay, so it seems like this is very similar. It's just instead of the 4 goals, it's the goals against them. But this is also not average. Well, maybe it is. With the most goals scored, per appearance. Yeah, so average goals against. So it's basically the same thing. It's just the inverse of it when we calculate it. So basically, I mean, we're really gonna do the same steps here. There's just one part of the calculation that's gonna be a little different. So normally, like, this is like an opportunity where you can be like, okay, well, we could like really like basically just copy and paste this code and make a couple changes for how we do the logic calculation. I'm just gonna start from scratch, maybe that'd help more. But I think, if this were like in the real world, you wouldn't want these two functions to just be totally isolated. There's a lot of duplication, and so you would want to kind of maybe combine these and refactor it, but that's okay. So we can basically start here. Let me just think through this for a second. Maybe if we can do one reduce statement, but I don't think that's going to be possible. I think I will use reduce. I think it's not sufficient to just do one reduce statement, but basically these are going to be our steps for all final matches against. That's really the only difference here. So we'll start, do data there, pass in the FIFA data. I'll log out the results of this. This guy, I want to make sure I didn't. I think I may have made some changes on this. So let me just revert this back so it doesn't give us an error. Okay, I think this is what it was, so it should be fine. Okay, so I'm just going to start by logging out, or actually just, I'm just going to start by returning the data. So not much here, but should still run. Okay, cool. So I think that's pretty accurate. Okay, so I'm going to use reduce. It doesn't say we have to use reduce, but I'm going to use it, and we'll see where it fits in. So I'm going to start with data.reduce. And I always got to Google this because I just never am sure. Well, we kind of had it up here. So yeah, it's accumulator and then the current item. So I'm going to do, so we're going to try and get, we're still going to build out this sums object that has all the goals in an array. But instead of doing a for each, we're going to actually condense this down into a reduce. I think it'll be clear kind of like what that looks like once we get there, but just a different way of doing it. So I'll do sums, and then this is going to be goal. All right, so we got our scaffolding of a function. Now here's where it's going to be nice, is instead of up here we set a variable sums, and then we just do a for each loop, and then in here we set it. Because this is reduced, ultimately it's going to return this anyways. So we could actually just set it in line here. So const sums equals 2. So now it's a little, I don't know, it's a little denser, but you know, might be a little cleaner. So effectively, instead of a for each loop, we're using a reduce to generate something very similar. So I'm going to copy over. That added some weird stuff in. I'm going to copy over some of these variables. These are just kind of, oh, that should be match. These are just, you know, kind of extracting out the data points. So home team, away team. Okay, get rid of that, guys. Some placeholder stuff. So these are going to be, I think, the same. So I'm going to add in these here. So again, we want to initialize each team to an empty array. So, and then we'll put in their 4 goals. So this is where I think it's going to get a little different. So instead of adding the goals that the team wants, so sums of home team dot push home team goals, we actually want to reverse it. So we want to get, for the home team, all the away team goals, because I think that's like the goals against them. So I think that's what they want. I don't watch sports at all, so like I don't even really know what I'm talking about, but I think this is it. So the home team away, we're going to get the away team goals, figure out whoever scored the most against them. Wait, let me make sure I understand. Calculates the team with the most goals scored against them. Yeah, so home team, away team goals, and then the away team gets a home team goals, vice versa. I think that's correct. Yeah, I mean, that is goals scored against them as far as I know. So, all right, I'm going to return sums here and delete this return statement because that's going to be problematic. And let's just see what we get. Got an error. Cannot read property Yugoslavia of undefined. Okay, so on line 125, it's saying that sums is undefined. So the reason is that if you don't pass in anything so with the reduce function, this starts as undefined. It doesn't start as 0, it doesn't start as an object. It starts as undefined unless you give it a parameter for the initial value. So that parameter is actually the second parameter of the reduce function. It's kind of hard to see here because we got this huge anonymous function here. But really, this big anonymous function is just a first parameter of reduce. And so the second parameter is we'll do the initial value of sums, which is just going to be an empty array. So kind of like up here, we did sums equals to, sorry, not array. Sums is equal to an object, and then we did a for each. Kind of the same thing. We're doing reduce, which is looping over it, but we're going to set sums to whatever reduce produces, which it's going to start with an empty object. I don't see an example here, but like.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If it's a number, sometimes it'll start with 0, right?
Yep, yeah. Exactly. So, okay, cool. So let's rerun that. Still nothing. So same line, 125 USA. Now that's interesting. First we got Yugoslavia, then we got USA of undefined. It's not. So it's still trying to read undefined. So that's because we always need to return after each iteration. We need to return the current, basically prior value. So it's looping through, and then we need to return sums here. And then, so each iteration, it's like, this is the first one, it gets injected in as sums, but if we don't return anything, then it's implicitly going to return undefined. And so effectively, without a return statement, it's returning undefined. So we return sums, which means it then gets used in the sums parameter again, and so forth. So now if we run it, all right, much better. So we got all the teams and all their goals. Some interesting ones here. I don't know what that is. I'm kind of curious, what's RN? RN greater than? I like some messed up data. I don't know what that means, but oh, okay. Well, is what it is. So, okay. So the one thing you may notice is we haven't filtered on the final stages yet. So this is actually where I'll just add in that if statement. So we'll do if the match dot stage is equal to final. And we're just going to wrap everything. We're not going to wrap the return statement. That always has to return. But if we're going to add anything to the object, then it has to be a final match. So rerun that, should be much smaller. Okay, that's what I think we'd expect. Should be the same team names as we saw with the other one, but different values, obviously. So, okay, so I think that gets us the object with all the values for all the goals. So the next step is to basically do this summation. So I'm actually going to do it a little different this time. So that was one way of doing it. We had what I call like tracker variables to track the average and then track the team name. But I think there are different ways of doing it. So let's try something else. So I think one way to do this is we can actually we could probably use a reduce. Yeah, I think this would be good for a reduce as well. So let's try it with reduce. So first thing I'm going to do is get an array of all the team names, all the countries. And just like we did before, it's going to be using the object.keys of the sums. So now we have an array of the team names. So I'll do team names.reduce. And so I will have we'll have team name over here as the second parameter. First parameter is going to be the, let's call this current team name. So that's like the current iteration. And then this is going to be the, how do we call this, team with most goals scored against them. No question what this variable is for now. Okay, so we got a reduce function set up here. This needs to do a few things, but I think we can tackle it. So this is going to be the team name. So this is going to be a string that we want, and this is the current team name of each iteration. So what do we want to do with this? So I know we want to basically first get sums of the current team name. And then that's going to give us that array of goals. So let's call this goals is equal to sums of current team name. So we want to get the average. Oh, actually, is there a way to do this? Yeah, because we want to track the average for each one. So I don't know. Because really we want to track two variables, and then that's why kind of why, you know, we had two variables here that we can track. So we almost need to like still track one of the variables outside. Let me think about how we could do this. So yeah, so we can do, let's do this. This is going to be somewhat creative, but could show a totally different way of doing it. So we're actually going to start with an object. This object is going to have two properties. It's going to have, let's call it winning team name and winning team average. That's not really winning, it's really losing, but look, let's just do team name and team average. Okay, so these are going to be the two keys of this object. So I'm actually going to type it here, team name. It's going to start just an empty string, and team average. And let's start that at 0. Okay. So now this variable is no longer representative of that. I'm going to call it current team stats. And so the idea is that with every loop, there are two items we want to track. We want to track the name of the team and then the average for that. So that we can get ultimately the team that had the worst or most goals against them. So, okay, so we got the goals, which is really goals against the team. Maybe I'll call it that. Goals against team, okay. We need to sum it up. I'm just going to copy paste our sum function up here. So we have goals against team, and it just uses reduce to get the sum. All right. And then the average is, again, just the sum goals divided by sum goals dot length. Okay, so for this iteration or each iteration, it gets the array of goals, it sums them up, and then it divides it by the length to give us the average. So this is the key step. We want to update this object, current team stats, only if the average is higher. So what we'll do is have an if statement. If current team stats dot team average is greater than, actually, sorry, if our average is greater than current team stats dot team average, then we'll set current team stats dot team average is equal to our new average. And we'll set current team stats dot team name to current team name. So this object with two properties only updates if the average is higher than what it previously was. And it stores it in this temporary object. Now there's really, like, functionally, there's no difference between having these two explicit variables and a for each loop versus this approach where it uses an object as a data structure to basically store two variables. But reduce, you can't like pass in two values here. So we're using an object to track multiple data points. So it's a way of kind of like hacking around that, if you think about it. And then we always want to return current team stats. Maybe it's been updated, maybe not, but we always want to return it so that way it's available for the next iteration. So, okay, well, I think that is it. So we got team names dot reduce, and this is always returning team stats. So let's set that to a variable, just team stats here. So that's going to be, you know, what all this returns. And then at the end, we can simply return team stats dot team name. Now it should return the one with the most goals against them. I'm gonna clear out that we did. And let's see, Uruguay, 2. That doesn't sound right. Because there's 5. So something doesn't look right.
I'm so sorry. I gotta go, but I would love to watch the recording after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, John and Ali. Bye.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna troubleshoot this and we can kind of see what the troubleshooting process looks like to debug this. But the first thing I'll do is, well, I think we have sums here. Are we printing out sums? We printed out sums before, so let's just log out sums right here, kind of see what we get. And then I'm gonna log out the team stats here, and we'll see what we get there. So this is just like kind of like a diagnosis. It's like, I don't know what's wrong, really have no idea. So let's just collect some more data. Okay, so first thing is this is the sums object. So that's why I'm like, no, I mean, Hungary is like has a higher average than Uruguay, obviously. It's almost like it got the least. Oh, but this is interesting. So yeah, what's interesting is it, wait, sorry, I'm just looking through here. Reduce team sums. Okay, so we logged out sums there. We logged out the team stats here. And then we return team stats dot team name, which is actually here. Okay, so Uruguay, where are we logging out Uruguay? I don't think Uruguay is, oh, sorry, Uruguay is coming from up top. Let's stop doing that. That was throwing me off. Okay. All right, so you see we actually, it did kind of log out team name, but it's an empty string. So it looks like this is not getting updated, even though we are updating it. So if the average is greater than current team stats dot team average, then it sets it. So I wonder if this is even like getting run. This is really interesting. So I'm gonna add console.log statement for like average in here. We'll see if that actually does anything. All right, it didn't even log it out. Like this isn't even getting run. That's really interesting. So let's walk through this code. Current team names, we get goals against them. So right there, we do the reduce, which should get the sum. So we got some goals, we get the average. So why would the average not be more than the length? So let's actually log out the average here and see if we can find anything that's wrong with it, because it should always be greater than 0 for the most part. Ah, not a number. Not a number. Why is it not a number? So NaN means not a number. So let's say you try and do like 5 divided, oh, we can't do it there, but like if we do like 5 divided by like that, we get not a number. It's basically saying didn't fail, we just, that's not possible. So we're giving you a value that says not a number, represents not a number. So with that in mind, let's, okay, so we need to see what each of these are. So let's see what console.log of some goals is. Oh, well, there's our problem. I just saw it. So some goals is the sum. Goals against team is the length. That's what I want to do. Some goals is a sum. It doesn't have a length, but this is the original array that has the length. So I will move the console log statements. We'll run again. We should get the right value. Sweden. All right. Sweden's a 5. Looks right to me. So that's it. So Sweden had the most goals scored against them on average. This was not a trivial problem. They definitely gave you some tough ones. But I think the key is like, you know, really breaking it down and like thinking through all the steps, and then the more code you write, the clearer things can get. So I think that, you know, it's something that definitely helps me a lot.
You want to do something different? Could you show me something?
Yeah. What do you got?
How would you go about making like a drop-down menu for like a mobile design? Like, I don't know even what that would be. Like, you know, like a hamburger menu. Like you click on it, it drops down. You know, instead of like having like a straight across or inline like block element looking thing. Like, you know what I mean, right? I don't know. Is that hard to do? Or is it like super simple?
Well, it depends. I mean, some simple things can be like really hard to do. Let me see a good way to do this. Yeah, we could probably create one. So let me just call this hamburger.html. Okay, so this is just going to be a, you know, plain HTML document. And then it's going to just have like style up here. And let me open this file up. Oh, okay. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Hamburger. Okay, nothing there yet. Yeah, so you're saying like a hamburger, like basically a button, you click it and it shows like a menu below it, or something like that.
It's just, yeah.
Okay. Do you have a website in mind? We could try and replicate it, or it could just kind of ad-lib it either way.
I don't really have anything in mind in particular.
All right.
I know a lot of sites have it.
Yeah, and that's okay. We'll get experimental. So so thinking through this, like I think one thing is it's gonna basically have so with CSS has built-in hover events, but they don't have a way to like track clicks. And so most
like an event listener.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So it does require some JavaScript, which is okay. But first, let's just like start with the basics. So I'm gonna just have a button. Why a button? Just because that's most semantically correct. It's most accessible. So it's a button. Normally you'd have like the hamburger icon in there, but we can just do some text for now. And let's put a class on this. We'll call this hamburger. And then this next one is going to be the menu. So really it's going to be, instead of the div, let's actually make it a nav tag. Just because, again, same things, accessibility, semantics. And it's just going to be a collection of links. So we'll just have, you know, my link, my URL, my link. And we'll just have a few of these. Okay. So we basically got the basics. Doesn't really do anything, and there's no styles. So what I would do, and this is all like plain JavaScript. You know, you may have heard React, jQuery, things like that. I'll just do it in plain JavaScript. But
how hard is it to do that with like React and like make a thing to do that? Is it like super complicated, or?
Well, so it's not. I mean, it makes the actual like this component easy. I mean, React is just like, you know, you have to introduce a whole new framework, and you know, you have to have like a React application, more or less. You know, but let's say we're doing it in React. The React syntax is on click. So you have an on click attribute. And then instead of quotes, use the braces, and then you pass in a callback function. So this would be like on click handler. Now this is not valid HTML, so it's not going to work here, but React knows they call it the JSX syntax. But this is how you do it in React, basically.
That's so cool. You should do another one of these things on React when we get there. I bet you'd be good.
Yeah.
Teaching that, man.
Yeah. I've just spent a lot of time in React, so yeah. But yeah, and then there's like Vue. If you're going to do Vue.js, their syntax is a little different. It's @click, and then you would, you know, basically pass in the name of a function here, and it would look for that function. jQuery, you know, that's, you know, they got their syntax. So I'll do plain JavaScript. Yeah, I'll do plain JavaScript here. So the first thing we want to do is basically show or hide this. So we know that we need some open state. So I'm just going to set that as a variable, is open. And we'll start it with false. Okay. So we need to hide this if it's closed or if it's not open. So what I'm going to do here is basically styles equals, oh gosh, how do you even do this? You can't do that. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done plain JavaScript like this, but we got to have something in here that hides the nav. So I'm going to give this nav an ID. I'm just going to call it nav. And we're going to do if nav, or sorry, if is open. If it is open, then we'll do document query selector all dot style. No. Sorry, JavaScript add style to element. Set attribute, yeah, that's probably it.
I'm guessing like React and stuff probably has like easier like little built-in components or something for this exactly even.
Exactly, yeah. So like in React, you can do like style is equal to with these braces and basically do, in this case, we're going to do display, it'd be like display, and then it would, there's so much, but you know, this is string interpolation, so we would do like, oh no, it would be, yeah, so it would be string interpolation of this, but we would do is open, probably a ternary operator, so it's like if it's open, then we do block, otherwise we'll do none. That's like the gist of it, but you know, obviously there's a lot of dependencies there. So, but yeah, it's very different. It's a lot cleaner, you know, and it's more like, I don't know, structured, but yeah, it's very different. But ultimately React behind the scenes is kind of just doing this. So I'm just going to say set the style to display none. Pretty straightforward. So let's see if that even works. It should hide it because it starts off as false. And it's not working. Let's see what the console says. Console's broken. What's going on there? Query selector of all. Oh, well, not all, nav. Okay, still nothing set. Attribute style display none. Okay, let's look at this, see if it's getting the style. Probably isn't, yeah. Display block still. So let's see, I don't know. Okay, set attribute. Oh, okay, so if it's open, okay, so if it's not open, then we'll hide it. Still nothing. Nope. Yeah, still nothing. So, okay, so element, so document.query selector of ID of nav dot set attribute style, display none. Well, let's try the semicolon. I don't know if that's important. Oh, wait, that's the bad. I guess we'll do the good. Oops. Okay, whatever. That's funny. Okay, so I guess that's a preferred syntax. So let's see if that works. Still nothing. So let's debug this. We'll do console.log of document.query selector of the nav. So let's even see if it's like reading the element. If it's not reading the element, then oh, well, there's the error. Didn't see that before. Okay, it's null. So it's not even like this isn't even working because document.query selector of nav is null. So the reason is that so when you download a web page or you go to any web page, things execute in the order that they're defined. So your browser basically like reads in this data. It's like streaming it in like a song. And as it encounters every line, it will read it and execute it. So line 4 is read and executed. 6, 7, and 8, it gets here and it's trying to execute this, but like it hasn't even read these lines yet. So it doesn't even it doesn't know what nav is. It doesn't have a document yet. It literally is like going and it's like, whoa, what nav are you talking about? You know, I haven't even read it. You know, I haven't even received it. Like you haven't even sent me this yet. And most websites will like stream that data. So it starts executing the script before it even is finished downloading the HTML page, basically. So one way to get around it, there's much better ways. This is, you know, we're getting far off from what the hamburger is, but one way is you just add it to the bottom. So now you make sure that the browser reads the actual HTML before you try and manipulate it, basically. So now if we run this, now it's gone. So we got it. How do I know that? I just know from experience, but that's the sort of thing that can get, as you can imagine, pretty frustrating, but that's why. So, okay, so now it's gone. So we want to have a click event on hamburger that then shows it. It's funny thinking through this, like we don't even really need this state here, but let's look at the click event handler JavaScript button. I don't even know the syntax. I know it's kind of, I don't know if you can do like an on click. You can. Okay, so there is an on click native. So you could do the event listener, which is like document.add event listener. That is what's called like a programmatic way of adding the event to the button. This is what's called the declarative way. So you are declaring it on the element versus programmatically writing code that attaches to it. So we're going to do this. On click, we'll run the function, call it open. No, we'll call it toggle menu. So in here, we need a function called toggle menu. And this function is basically going to open it if it's closed or close it if it's open. So if we just want to close it, this is how we close it.
So HTML has a built-in on-click thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Now, not all elements do though. So I think I think just buttons and stuff. But like you can do, like if you wanted to do an on-click on like a header or something, I don't think it works like that. So in like frameworks like React, because you can add event listeners to anything, you know, that's where those come in handy too. Yeah, so okay, so we'll do it if it's it's not displayed, we'll show it. And that is going to be done with block. Otherwise, it's none. So how do we detect, how do we know if it's open or closed? Well, same thing. We're going to read this and compare it. So we'll do this. So if the style.display is block, then we'll set it to none. Else, we'll set it to block. So that should toggle it, I think. And then we can get rid of this. This is, again, there's really no need to track this variable. The state of whether it's open or not is really just wholly defined by what the style is. So now we can run this. So nothing. All right. Might need the parentheses here. I don't know the exact syntax of that, but okay, yep, there we go. So it's toggling. So the yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of funny. It's a lot to just get something as simple as this, but that's how you do it. But so I know, like, to clean this up now, it's like, okay, well, I know we want our nav to start with start closed or hidden. So we'll do style equals display none. So now if we refresh, yeah, so now it starts hidden, so we have to show it. So yeah. We can, let's say we wanted to change the button toggle. We can do, we'll start with it saying open. So we open it and then we want it to change to close. So in here we can do the same thing. Okay, now I'll refactor this a little bit. So this is like pretty repetitive. So I'll just call this L. What L? L for element, pretty common convention. So I'm just setting some variables, clean this up a little bit. All right. So if we're showing it, we want to change the button text, which is inner HTML. We'll type that to close. And then on the other side, if it is closed and we're hiding it and closing it, we'll change this to open. So now it's open. Oh no, that's not going to work. L is the nav. So let's do ID is equal to button. So now it's going to be document.query selector of the button. And instead of the L, which is the nav, here. Okay, so reading through this, we get a variable, which is the nav element. If that element, if the nav is display block, so it's showing, then we hide it. And then we change the button inner HTML, which is just the text or anything that's inside here. We make it open. Yeah, and then the other case is if it's closed and we want to show it, and then we want to change the button text to say close. So if we run this, we'll open it, close it, open it, close it, and not click the link. So it's a lot. It's a lot of code, which is why JavaScript frameworks exist. Doing document.query selector of this inner HTML, it's not, you know, the naming isn't even really very nice. You know, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and so that's where, you know, frameworks really help for anything that's non-trivial. You know, those tools, like you know, it's unless you're doing some simple stuff, usually you're not writing in plain JavaScript.
How
like
quick could
this.
you make the same thing using any random framework, like on a general basis? Like,
Yeah,
is it like
so
way easier, like no thought at all? Like, do you have time to do another example of above our head stuff, if you don't mind? I don't know.
yeah. Well, let me see if I can show you some other stuff. This is a different project. Maybe there's something in here we can do. This is very, I mean, there's a lot here. This is also Vue.js. So like the two leading frameworks are Vue.js and React. React is definitely a lot more popular. They're pretty similar conceptually. Syntax is somewhat different, but you know, but this is it's all Vue.js. Let me see what I can do. Okay. All right, here's a good example. So these are some worksheets. You can download them as like PDFs. Look around. Yeah, that's actually probably the best thing to do. So yeah, so this is a button to download it. Oh, but that's just a link. It's not an actual button. So I'm just trying to think of some interaction. What can we do? Videos, is there anything I can do? Okay, I know one thing. So this download button, there was another feature, we just got rid of it, but we wanted to have a print button next to this. So in these, this is the worksheets page. So that represents all these worksheets. Here's our download right here. So if I wanted to add one for print, what I could do is just do icon name equals to printer, I think. I don't know. So instead of doing all that document query selector stuff, I'm just going to do @click equal to print. So it's saying for a click, run the print function. And then the print function, I just have to add in methods here. And there's a lot going on here, but I'm going to define a print method, and it's going to do window.print. And that's it. So now if we open this up, we should be able to print this. So that printer, and let me look at the name of that icon. I don't think it's called printer. It's called, oh, I think just print. Am I called print? The printer. So confused.
Does the caps matter?
Yeah, I think it's uppercase though, because the download is working. So why isn't printer working? It's actually kind of bizarre. I'm just gonna look at this. Okay, it is printer. So it is printer. Well, let's see if we have any JavaScript errors. That often is the case. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it just popped up. What the heck? That was weird as heck.
All right, okay. I swear it was printer first. Okay, well, anyways, yeah, so anyways, if we click this, click it, nothing happens. Usually, so @click, print method, window.print. I thought that would work. Hmm. So let's see if it's even logging it. Yeah, it's not working. Click. That is so interesting. Oh, sorry, I know. So this is a custom icon, or sorry, a custom component. Icon is not an HTML thing, you know, something we built, and we just don't support click events on it. So I'll just do it. I'll just do this. All right, so now it's wrapped in a button. So now click it, we get the print dialog. So pretty simple, trivial example, but this is the syntax at click versus if we, you know, look at the other one, it's like get the element and, you know, or on click and define a function. It gives a lot more structure. I wouldn't say it's simpler. Like I think some stuff is simpler, but there's a lot of overhead. Like you have an entire framework. It's very opinionated in how you do things. You have to structure things in that way. And there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's like if you have an app that's like sufficiently complex, it makes a lot of sense. But sometimes if it's like, well, you know, this is just like a landing page, it's like, do you really need React? You know, I mean, people have been building web pages and websites without React for a long time. You know, so it definitely makes things easier, but you know, it does introduce a lot of overhead, and so simplifies some things, but and allows you to do a lot more, but it's also a lot more complexity.
Pretty nifty though.
Yeah, yeah, it is cool. All right, anything else?
Do you always have like a design to go by, or do like solo work where you make up everything on your own a lot, or?
Yeah, I do both. I do.
Do you have any issues maybe like coming up with a design, or you just like got it, bro?
Oh
Using
no.
resources to get ideas, maybe.
Yeah, I do look at other websites for inspiration. You know, I think there's two aspects to it. There's like, you know, like the visual side, the aesthetic, and then there's the interactions. You know, the figuring out the right interactions, I think is, I don't know if it's more important, but usually you get a lot more value out of that in terms of, you know, if your goal is to like have a user understand something, you know, they're going to get a lot, understand something or make it feel like natural and frictionless. Like you get a lot more value out of focusing on the interaction versus the prettiness of it. You know, so I think Amazon is a good example of something that has pretty terrible visual design, in my opinion, but the general UX is pretty good. You know, just certain interactions are heavily optimized, you know, for what they want you to do. So anything.
How crazy is it to have sorry, how crazy is it to have like a built-in store or something? Like, is that just like a crap ton of work, or like, is it actually easily achievable?
To have an e-commerce store?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it's a fair amount of work no matter what. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, it depends on what you need. You know, it could be something as simple as something simple, or it could be a massive project with you know, requiring dozens or hundreds of developers. Like, so I don't know, at Tough to Needle, we
I guess
got
that's a really
by.
broad question, my bad.
No, it's okay. It's I mean, it's a good question. It's like, what are the what's the bare minimum? You know, it's like, okay, well, you probably need a shopping cart, and a shopping cart, you know, if you think of it as just like it's something that maintains state across all the different pages you're on. You know, that's what's unique about it, is you add something to a shopping cart. You don't have an account sometimes. Usually you don't have like an account that you're logged in with, so it's tracking you, and usually it does that with a cookie. So you have to write to a cookie which is stored in your browser, and then, you know, that stores a reference to the product, and then on every page you read from that cookie and show what product or how many products you have in your shopping cart. you know, but then when you check out, you know, you got to put in your credit card information. There are security constraints or considerations around that. You know, you got to make the charge, and that's done on a back end service. So I mean, it's a lot, you know, but I would say it's probably not the most trivial web app, but you can build something pretty basic that is kind of just the bare bones of a kind of full stack web app. So yeah, it's interesting because it's like, you know, think about it, like what is like the very basic, what would you need? You know, and oftentimes even with that, you probably would use a framework. So, but you don't need to. I mean, it's you always do it, you know, pretty bare bones.
Is there like something in particular you use to like charge people? I don't know. I can't get my head around that. Like, what do you do with like a card's information without like, you know, I don't know. I can Venmo people money, but like, how do you do that with like a website? Like, is that in the back end? Is it something like, I don't know. I don't get how a store works in general, really, when I get thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's what's called payment processors. So you use a payment processor, and they're like the clearinghouse, or you know, you send the credit card details over to them, and they actually perform the validation and charge. And so there's, you know, the big payment processors work, you know, basically with I think they're like called like clearing houses, but like basically the networks like Visa, MasterCard, you know, and I guess the issuing banks. I'd have to read up exactly all the players. But yeah, I mean, basically you need a payment processor that you can send credit card details to. And
So
that's
that's what
basically what it comes down to.
what it's called is a payment processor. That's the correct terminology for whatever it is, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So like Stripe is a payment processor. You know, Braintree, PayPal is a payment processor.
Oh, even PayPal, yeah.
Yeah, they offer similar functionality, but yeah, it's, you know, yeah, I mean, I mean, there's some complexity, and because security is such a concern, you kind of have to do things differently with it. But you know, I think the essence of it is you collect a credit card, and you take that information, you send it to the payment processor with an API call, and then the payment processors, you know, comes back with a status, either that it was declined or it succeeded. So that's like the very basic of it. And if it succeeded, it truly did charge, and you know, you can rely on that.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole little tutorial there.
Yeah, it's you know, like Stripe makes it really easy. Conceptually, I think Stripe is because of like new security concerns and stuff. Stripe is like, it's not like the simplest thing, but like in probably, if you know, I would say a couple dozen lines of code, you know, like 20 lines of code, you could have a full payment processing system. Not a very robust one, but you could make it work with like 20 lines of code.
Wow.
So yeah, it's, you know, it's yeah, you know, some JavaScript to get the card number and stuff, make an API call. It's kind of oversimplifying it, but really that's what made Stripe so powerful is, you know, before Stripe, you know, accepting payments online, custom, like if you're doing it for a custom website, you know, you had to, you know, sign a contract with a payment processor. You know, they had these like really convoluted systems you had to integrate with. They're super expensive, and so no one really did it, you know, unless there was a lot of justification or need there. It was one of those things where it's like, if you're just starting something for fun or a small project, like you won't collect payments. It's just too hard, you know. And not hard, it was like logistically hard. You know, Stripe, you can sign up today and like start accepting payments right away. But these other ones, it's like, well, let's hop on a call, you know, let's figure out your needs, you know, and it was that model. It's like, well, you know, can I just get going? So yeah, they definitely changed the world.
Yeah, I'm out of questions.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, anything else?
If you ever do it again, you should do like some crazy React stuff though.
All right. Yeah, there's this React project, just finished up. This is definitely some crazy React, but here's a date picker. I'll show you this real quick.
Yarn. I've heard of people using Yarn, and there was another one. I don't know.
Oh yeah. So this is it uses a library, the Airbnb date picker, so it's not like full custom, but this basically takes the Airbnb date picker and customizes it to.
Isn't that like a call center place? Oh.
Yeah. So.
Oh,
sorry, that's mine. Here's Airbnb one. Yeah, so you can kind of see it looks pretty different. So we took this and like customized it over into this. So
Airbnb is like a call center place, right? I feel like I've heard of them.
Oh, Airbnb, they're the like hotel, like sharing your house, couch surfing thing.
Oh, that's what it is. Couch surfing, nifty.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is I would say is some pretty advanced React stuff, but you know, you can see here's that on click. So
yeah.
on click equals cancel, apply.
Yeah, some crazy functionality was just that, huh?
Yeah.
You can, like, drag and you can type in and everything. Was the whole thing that was React?
Yep. Yeah,
wow, that is awesome. Golly, I want to know that crap so bad.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think we start React with the next.
Yeah, the next unit we get the basic part. They start us off with the dome and like just regular stuff, and then on event listeners, and then we get to start barely a little bit of React.
That's cool. You guys will like it.
All right. Well, thanks, man. I'm about to cut it.
All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks,
I will stop recording and share this out. So.